welcome. Listen, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
I'm going to try and make this not like a therapy session, but I did want to ask first and foremost, whether you were a creative kid, this huge career you've had, this huge creativity, these incredible performances, where did that start coming from?
Where did it start? I suppose at school. I was a bit mischievous, I'd say, at school. You know, and it's interesting in the film, just a clip of Funny Cow, and there's a scene in it where a character talks about somebody said she was a class clown, and they said, well, you should be a comic. And that sort of came from, you know, that was what I told Tony when I was a kid. So I like showing off, as I think most performers do. That's how it starts. I remember somebody saying to me, well, you always have to have a secret about why you act. And I'm like, it's no secret, I like showing off. But as you get older, that element of showing off sort of declines in a way, and it becomes something, you know, different and deeper and a bit more complex. But yeah, I was. There were two of my friends across the road, Rebecca and Alison, used to go to a Unitarian church and do plays and go in the Sunday school and paint pictures and do nice things. And I remember saying to me, Mum, I want to go. And she said, well, I'm not taking you. She said, I've not got time. So she said, if you want to go, you can go with them. So I did, and they used to put on little pantos, and that's when I started doing a bit of that.
Because we are here to talk about class, as if people hadn't noticed. And I wondered, it sometimes feels like...
It is about middle class list today, isn't it?
Of course it is. Of course, here we are, in this wonderful class, but we're all middle class, it's all fine. But it's difficult, listen, I mean, it's difficult stuff to sort of put your finger on, but it feels like one of the definitions of middle class is, or one of the ways it takes effect, is like if you're a kid, you get taken to the drama club and you get taken to the film club and you get sort of brought into this world, and you're kind of taught that you can aspire to that stuff. So I wonder whether you felt that you know, when you were growing up and that first spark was happening, whether you felt that this was a life you could aim for.
I never felt, there was nobody ever encouraging, but I think it wasn't because they wanted to discourage me. I think people were protective, my family were protective. I think when I look back now, we think, they would just seem quite indifferent about it. But I think it wasn't. I think they just felt, you know, when you said you wanted to be an actor, and that makes me, don't know any actors, we don't know anybody in that business, and all they hear is that percentage that gets bandied about, which is sort of true. 99.9% of actors are out of work at any time. So it was an alien world, where I came from. But that didn't stop me. It's that thing. I didn't think, I can't. I just thought I have to. And I think you'll find that with whatever we do, it's a sort of an obsession. It's a bit of a disease, really. I think I've got to do it. And I had lots and lots of knockbacks. I got rejected from every single drama school in the country. And again, I ended up going to RADA, and people said, well, and I got a scholarship. And they said, well, how come you auditioned for RADA? You couldn't have afforded it. I said, that never came into the equation. I didn't do things practically. There was an element of naivety. I was just like, well, I'll give it a go, and then we'll see what happens. But that's my career, I think. Anyway, I'll give it a go and see what happens,
I mean, were you aware of class when you were growing up? And there's a brilliant quote. I'm going to do that terrible thing of like quoting back something that you were quoted as saying, seeing if it's true. But I remember you saying it was like you were aware of class because there were middle class kids and their parents had African carvings and their mums and dads liked Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. And that seemed to be like that was like the defining quality of the middle
books.
class.
There was books in the house. Right. We had I don't know why. My dad used to work in a waste paper. He used to drive lorries, and it was a waste paper company. And I remember he must have got it from there, because he used to bring up these funny padded, do you remember those sort of 70s, 80s sort of silky padded cards? Anyway, he used to bring those back that'd get thrown in the waste, and this Who's Who, he came back with a copy of Who's Who, and we had Emma, was it called Emma the Chocolate Labrador? There was a series of books about a guide dog, and I think my mum liked dogs, so I think we had that. It was more of a kid's book, but anyway. So that was only 2 books we had in our house. But then, I think I was very fortunate, because on the other hand, my maternal, he was so that doesn't make any sense, he was my step-granddad, my mum's stepdad, was in the Communist Party. And he was very educated, very well read, and had, worked at Leyland Motors on the assembly line all his life, but his real passion was education. So that for me, and that he made me very aware of class. And again, I think he was trying to protect me, but he used to say, you're working class, Maxine, it's not going to happen. You're working class, we're working class. So it was drummed into me a lot when I was younger.
That's interesting, because when you mention education, I wonder, it feels like a lot of the time people feel held back, whatever they're doing actually, but acting is one of the problems. by a lack of confidence and a sense of sort of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I mean, do you think education's a key to unlocking that, so that people actually feel, well, look, actually, I've got the same education as anybody else?
I do, of course. It's really imperative. But then I sometimes think we get obsessed with that. That then therefore you are not worthy. Therefore, if you've not, you can't compete with these people who've been, have got that elitist sort of education. And I think that's where we are at the moment in society. People are petrified of speaking up, I think, because they think they haven't got the terminology. I suffer from it. I think, I haven't got the words, and sometimes you go to things and you think, I don't even know what they're talking about. But that's their fault. If they can't speak in the way that everyone can understand, then they ain't clever as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, when you're talking about your way in, it feels like theatre was probably your first love, and I wonder how much of that was to do with just being on the stage and that the magic of the acting life, I suppose, which I wouldn't know about, but you would, which is that sense of communication with an audience. Is it that, or is it also that theatre feels a little bit more democratic in some way? I mean, we're going to talk a lot over the course of the day about the difference for actors between theatre, film and TV. Theatre feels like it's more of a sort of people's medium, oddly.
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes you can be in situations where it's not, but it is more, there's some actors in here, definitely. It is more, it does feel more democratic. It is more roll your sleeves, or everyone's, on an equal basis. I mean, there's this continual argument about pay, but if you work at the Royal Exchange, if you've got one line or you're playing Hamlet, you're all on the same wage. There's no, you know what I mean? There's yeah, and in that, but as a team, it feels more a team effort. You spend 4 weeks in a rehearsal room, or 6 weeks, or longer if you work at fancy pants places like the National down the road. But so you get to know people a lot, and I think the graft is you don't just turn up, do your bit, go home. It's about teamwork, and that's what I love acting. It's not. I don't think it's everybody's drive. Some people like the sort of insular nature of it, and it's about them. But for me, it's about being part of a gang.
Okay. So how different in that case is TV? I wanted to start talking about TV, and I wondered how much of a culture shock that was for you in that case.
Well, I went to drama school, and RADA teaches a classical theatre training. Really, when I was there wasn't so much sort of screen work. We used to have these two retired BBC television directors, Ronnie and Sean, and they used to have a little handheld camera, and we used to do scenes from plays, and then used to play them back, and we all used to go in a room and cry, because but none of us have any future on screen. We were terrible, So, but then my first job leaving was Dinnerladies.
Right.
So, and that was very different, because I suppose it was like theatre, but there was a bank of cameras. You set it, we stage it, we rehearsed all week, and then we filmed it, and you knew where to hit your mark. But it wasn't too much of a culture shock. Television now is a bit of a shock to me. How fast schedules are, how tight schedules are, how the budgets are shorter. Now I find television really difficult.
That's interesting. Is that because it feels like sometimes from the outside that TV is taken more seriously now in a way that maybe it wasn't sort of 15, 20 years ago. So is it that there's more money involved, and there's more pressure, and there's more hierarchy as well? So,
there's a lot more. And so that makes the freedom within the product becomes restricted, because there's a lot more cooks.
So it's less fun to do?
Yeah. In general, unless, there's, actually the three, things that were fun to do. And things like Three Girls, which was made with so much love and care and compassion and delicacy, so that restored my faith. I was getting a bit of a wobble about television, and I thought, I don't really want to do this anymore. And then I did Three Girls and went, of course it's all right. There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the other things we're going to be talking about a lot today, and you are one yourself, whether you like it or not, is role models. And I wonder back then with Dinnerladies, Victoria Wood, for people who were at Funny Cow last night, I apologise because we're sort of talking about Victoria Wood again, but it's never a bad time to talk about her. It felt like she was I suppose as a woman, as a creative talent, that she was a great model to follow for you. Yeah,
she was. She was my inspiration from being young, and then getting to work with her was extraordinary. Although I don't think at the time I realised it. I think you always look back on situations and think, I'm glad I didn't think about that too much, else I probably would have gone into some sort of meltdown, But yeah, I remember being a kid, and I was dumpy and, bass in her cut, little tomboy, and Victoria Wood came on screen, and I went, she sounds a bit like me. I mean, I don't want to insult her, but, you know, she was a bit, you know, she had short hair, she had these funky clothes, she was sort of feminine, but there was a, you know, tomboyish edge there. And I went, wow, this woman's amazing. And she's goofy and she's funny and she does these brilliant characters. You know, all I wanted to do was put silly hats on and create characters, you know. Got stuck in very sort of corporate, you know, legal things, being sort of serious in it. But
well, because I was going to say one of the things about Dinnerladies, the charm of it was that it was about, and it wasn't like heavy-handedly about class, but it was just about ordinary people.
Yeah, of course. And the irony is Victoria Wood was actually middle class, and I always used to feel sort of slightly sorry for her because it's that thing, and people were here for last night. They go, oh, a northern accent, therefore must be working class. Right. Because there is, you know, there is only one class in the north. And that's working class. And if you're a woman, you know, I've said this before, you're slightly brassy and a bit blowsy. And if you're a man, you're either aggressive or you've got some sort of, you know, angsty, you know, poetical bent. But that's it. That's the entire north in a nutshell, you know.
I wondered whether we were going to get onto the north and London, but now that we're there, I mean, exactly, it's fine. As we said last night, so you're up there, you're all working class, we're all eating Pret a Manger sandwiches down here.
Drinking your shandies.
Exactly, as we do. But how much of a pressure was that when you were first starting out? I mean, was there genuinely among casting directors and directors in the industry this assumption that, you know, there was literally no difference between you and Victoria Wood or anyone else from north of like St Albans?
No, when I first and people used, when I think back of some of the comments that were made to me, you know, it makes your toes curl now. But you know, people saying to me, you have read the script, and I was like, yes, I've read the script. Yes, I've learned that so far that I need to read the script. And then they go, and I don't know whether you noticed, but she's not actually from the north. And I go, yeah, I read that because you know, I got through that long word Sussex. I got that. You know. You know, and I remember after Dinnerladies, people going to me, oh, and where did Victoria Wood find you? And I'd go, well, I went to RADA, and they go, really? Where are we? We're not in the 1950s. Right. You know what I mean? What?
But it is interesting because it feels like, again, one of the things which is going to come up is there's that thing about like non-professional actors. And I know some actors I know who've been trained, who come from, you know, from working class backgrounds, and they've trained and they've worked very hard. And people will say to them, isn't it wonderful? You know, isn't it wonderful that you're doing this first-time actor? And it's like, well, no, I've been acting for 15 years. But there's that idea that somehow, maybe because of the way you speak, maybe because you have to be like street casting. That's the only way that you can do it.
And in a funny way, I sort of felt for a little bit, beginning of my career, I can't speak. I had a bit of much red wine last night.
You and me both, right?
I fell between two stools because I had this accent. I'd come from this background, but I trained at RADA. But I wasn't quite classed as classical. And then there was another, you know, when the street casting went on, and I remember going up for some, you know, and I remember the casting director saying to me, whatever you do, don't say you went to drama school, don't say you've trained, you know, and I didn't, but then people didn't want me because, but she's been to RADA, so she's not the real deal. So I sometimes I felt I got a bit stuck.
Right.
You know, because people didn't quite know what to do with you. You had this accent, you were working class, you had this persona, yet you went to RADA. We don't. So what does that mean?
Do you think that's got easier, or actually that we've spiraled a little bit backwards? So if you're coming down from Bolton now, 17, 18 years old, is it going to be easier for the next really?
No, I don't. No, I'm sorry, I'm being facetious. Do you mean is it easier for them to get into?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a big question. Have drama schools, but then also the industry beyond that, are they better at dealing with working class girls coming down from the north wanting to act, or are they have actually we've spiraled a little bit?
I think we've gone backwards. I felt we were making some steps forward. I was looking at actresses who were sort of 10 years younger than me and coming through, you know, and people like, you know, Jodie Whittaker, and I was going, Jodie's got an accent, but she doesn't seem to be defined by it. Maybe that's how Jodie presents herself anyway, you know, you know, I don't know, but I thought, that's great, and she's, you know, look at her career, it's fantastic. I thought, oh, good. But I don't know what's happened in the interim. We know what's happened. This government, they've got a lot to blame for everything. But because people can't afford, it's not just acting, it's mobility in you know, not mobility, but, you know, and I hate the word aspiration, you know, it's aspirational, but if you want an education now, a higher education, it's impossible if you haven't got an income, a private income. And RADA was brilliant, actually, because I'd not been back recently, but they really did, and I think they still do, help. They will audition, and then they will say, we give you like a conditional place and then we'll try and find the money. And everybody in my year who was from backgrounds that couldn't have afforded ended up, you know, they got the money, they got in. They found somewhere, they found a fund or a personal sponsor or a scholarship or some sort of, you know, trust. But I think it's impossible. But then again, it's a difficult profession, full stop, and that's what we've got to remember. It's hard wherever you're from. I had from people in my year at drama school who came from money and were very well connected, but it didn't happen for them, and it wasn't because of lack of talent. You know, it's the strike rate, you know.
But it's still, I mean, you're right, listen, acting's never going to be an easy life, but I suppose it's about the amount and the height of the hurdles that you have to face.
But then you look now, don't you, looking at three girls, Liv, Hill and Molly, Windsor, both up for BAFTAs, both come from Nottingham, and we're in a drama group in Nottingham that Nottingham's got two amazing drama groups. You know, you've got Vicky McClure, Sam Morton, all those people coming out at one. You've got Liv and Molly coming out of another. And this talent that's out there, so it goes to show that it just needs harnessing in some way. And we need more, we need more of those groups, more of those people. I think Ian Smith, the guy who ran
Central TV Workshop, yeah. I mean, part of the day is supposed to be, I mean, I think people have grounds for complaint and worry and concern, but it's also supposed to be, you know, a celebration, actually, of working class talent and the voices that do get through. I mean, I wanted to talk about Shameless a little bit, because it felt like as well as having role models, the other key is maybe having representations of working class stuff.
Yeah.
Shameless felt like it was quite important, actually, as a viewer, because it was almost a bit of a sleight of hand. It felt cartoonish on the surface, but actually it always felt like there was a lot going on under the surface.
And that's what they wanted. I mean, when we started, they basically said they want it to be like The Simpsons.
Right.
That was the sort of they said that was the tone of it, and that Frank Gallagher was like Homer Simpson, and then everyone else, you know, around. Which I can see the comparisons. David.
So where does Veronica fit into that then?
And that is a good, where does
interesting,
Veronica?
Isn't it? Yeah. In her own little box.
But it was so refreshing to read a script that was a drama sat on a council estate in the north that wasn't miserable. We get bombarded that the thing, and I don't think it's just the north. I think as humans, but in especially in working class culture, humour is used so much to soothe, as therapy, to get out of those situations, to lighten the load. You know, and I think a lot of the time drama misses that. It all becomes very bleak and very inward looking, and you can still have humour coming out of the darkest situations, and I think sometimes we miss it. And Shameless just exploded like that. And I know some people, I've had criticism and people saying, well, I think the representation, and it was the show that kicked off this poverty porn trend, but I'm not going to buy that. I'm not going to.
Never. It always felt a bit smarter than that. There was a lot more going on.
Yeah. And it was done with so much love. It's Paul Abbott's family. It was based on his family. And it really was, you know, his mum left and he had this great rambling family and they were left to sort of fend for themselves. So it's done from a truth and an honesty and a lot of love.
I wondered about that because you're a writer as well, and I wondered with Shameless.
Well,
You're a writer, it's fine. But Paul Abbott, being able to draw on that personal experience, there is that sense that actually it's not just about faces on the screen, it's also about the stories that are being told, and it's about who's telling those stories, because that's what Shameless always felt like as a viewer, was someone who knew that world in a way that maybe, bluntly, a middle-class person wouldn't know. They just wouldn't know the feel of it.
Yeah, it's the intricacy, isn't it? And it's a cultural thing. Class is linked with culture as well. There's a culture within class, and I think as actors you can play any part. I really do. I'm not that, I don't get het up, but there are times. But I always think as the barriers I face was, if you wouldn't understand what it is to be middle class or upper class. But I think actually it's harder to play. I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think actually the culture, the complexity within being working class is probably harder. But maybe that's just because I don't know.
No, it does feel like that. I mean, because all the way going back to, we're going to talk later about that moment in the 50s and 60s where a lot of working class actors sort of broke through for the first time. And Michael Caine always tells that story about being cast as an officer. And he was cast as an officer by an American director, because he always says, a British director wouldn't have ever thought to play that. But actually, without naming names, we've probably all seen examples of, and talented people, but very expensively educated actors who do try and play characters from a more typical background. It doesn't always work out that well.
Well, they usually get the wrong side of the pennines. I'm like, she's from Oh, we always, as me and my boyfriend called it, oh, they're doing the Lancashire accent, are they?
Well, you're northern, right?
Yeah, you all know each other. They go, oh, you're from... No, that's Yorkshire. That's about 80 miles away. But you don't... No, we don't, yeah.
Well, listen, Silk, we saw a clip from Silk as well. Silk felt like a different kind of role. But, I mean, tell us about getting into that project, because it felt like maybe there were risks involved, and I'm interested in Silk.
Well, I'd done criminal justice. Actually, that was the first part that I think I'd played. I played a middle-class character. So Peter Moffat had written a drama I did called Criminal Justice. And again, I remember going for that audition. And initially, I got the script, and it was to play Sophie Okonedo, the part that an amazing Sophie Okonedo played. And my mum had just passed away, and I just went, I'm not. I read it, and I thought it's great, but I just can't face it. And I said to my agent, I said, I'm not going to go in for the meeting, for the audition. And then he came back to me and went, well, what happens if this is me, I'm so fickle. What happens if I see if I can get you an audition for the lead? Oh, all right then. I feel much better now. Ooh, me mum. Sorry, mum. I don't know why I'm looking at that. I don't even believe it. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, our ashes are in the roof, actually, that's why. And I remember going in, and I thought, and then again, the day before I went in, and I thought, I'm just going to ring him and go, this is ridiculous. Who's going to buy me as a barrister's wife? And I thought, hang on, this is the wrong attitude. I always talk about this sort of invisible sort of chorus of disapproval, these people that I think, who are them who won't think I can do it? I thought the only person who thinks you can't, doesn't believe you can do it is yourself. So I sort of had a bit of a word with myself, and I went, right, pretend you're a proper actress when you go into this. Pretend to be a serious, and Jan de Mange, who directed it, as soon as I went in, I thought, oh, great. I just knew he's a fantastic director, and he's gone off now to, he's doing his big Hollywood movies, but he's French-Algerian originally. He was born here, but he's French-Algerian, and I spent a lot of time in France, and I just knew he didn't have that issue with class. It wasn't a thing for him, so I just went in and did it. And then I got the part. Sorry, I've completely digressed.
No, but it's
anyway. And then, but what was interesting, one of the reviews said there was a part in the TV series where I got in a giant fancy 4x4. And one of the reviewers said, I think it was in The Guardian or somewhere, said, at first when I saw Maxine Peake get into the 4x4, I thought she must have been stealing it.
And that was in The Guardian?
I think it was The Guardian or the Telegraph or something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't really mix The Guardian and the Telegraph up, should I? But, maybe.
No, but well, yeah.
And then Peter was then saying to me, oh, and I'm doing this thing about barrister. And again, I went, oh, well, I won't get cast in that. And then I went, and then they phoned me and said, would you come in for a meeting? And I said I would. But I remember at the first meeting, and I was chatting to Michael Offer, the director, who was Australian. He said, and what are you going to do about your accent? And I went, what do you mean? And they went, well, she's a barrister. And I was like, oh, here we go. And I've had it so much. People said to me, but she's educated. She's been to university. She would have lost her accent. I said, I went to RADA, where we had constant voice, classes, and I have still this accent. So it's a fallacy, but but I think we perpetuate that as actors. I watch actors on screen and go, why are you doing it posh? And I did it in Silk, the first series of Silk, and then if you watch it again, you go, where's her accents dropped? So I sort of went, well, I'll posh it up a bit, and it's really exhausting, actually. So it's this weird hybrid sort of slightly. And I thought, well, I'll use it that she feels she's got to sort of put on a bit of an accent to fit in, even though she's a bit rebellious, but she's still very conscious of her voice. And then people still going, I was Northern and from Bolton. So by the seconds, I thought, oh, I'll just give myself a bit of a break here. And so it slightly drifts more, sort of.
But it's interesting, right, because that whole thing about the North and South, because when you mentioned Jan de Mange, so Jan de Mange is like I said, French-Algerian, as you say, and he's from London, grew up in the state in northwest London, I think. But he gets it. It's interesting. Yeah. It's that thing that actually, so you can be Northern and middle class and still have those sort of weird prejudices about it. But actually, I mean, I hate to use the phrase class consciousness, but there is that idea that actually if you're working class and you grow up in London, you will get that. There's no reason you can't play a barrister.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm going to, this is a segue, a clumsy segue into talking about your writing and your directing, because it feels like there's part of this conversation is about acting, and then part of it is also about stepping behind the camera and about writing and directing. Now, you've written for quite a while, I think.
Yeah, radio and stage.
Right.
Radio plays and stage, because, I haven't...
Yeah, and you are being really very self-effacing about it. It's interesting.
Well, because I couldn't comfortably say I was an actor really till being in the profession for 10 years. I think you do have to earn your stripes. I don't know. I feel like an actor. I feel confident to go, I'm an actor. You know, you'd get in cabs and cab drivers would go, and what do you do? And you go, oh, and then they go, I'm an actor. And they go, what have you been in then? And then, no. And then you say, no, never seen that. And then you get really desperate and you're going, oh, God, what could I have been in that they might have seen? And you think, it really doesn't matter. But I've completely lost my train of thought.
But that's another interesting thing, because I wanted, again, that idea about theatre.
Oh, but writing, yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
well,
Sorry.
You've sparked an idea. I want to ask you about this quickly, which is actually, because Funny Cow, if you haven't seen Funny Cow already, if you weren't here last night, go and see it next week when it comes out. It's a great movie. But I wonder whether it feels like theatre finds space for a working class voice. TV does to an extent. Film maybe doesn't. I mean, Funny Cow feels very unusual because it's a story about a working class character.
Yeah.
There's that sense of, we were talking about with Shameless, that sense of detail in there.
Yeah.
Now, from your point of view, I mean, is this just me being chippy, or does that feel like, from an actor and writer's point of view, does it feel like film?
It does, and like I say, I started writing in radio, you know, and Radio 4, which I sometimes, when I scream at it, obviously, sometimes John Humphrys in the Today Show can get quite heated in the morning. I threatened to put that radio through the window on numerous occasions. But I was because my granddad instilled, used to sit in his little kitchen with the radio on all day with his Morningstar in one hand and the Radio 4 on until the Archers came on. He'd go, oh, turn that off. And the Archers would, and Woman's Hour, he was a bit old school, so Woman's Hour sometimes when they started talking about genitalia,
right, yeah.
that'd have to go off as well. But he always used to say to me, they don't, as far as radio goes, and I feel the same. I think they don't think they have a sort of a working class listenership sometimes. I think they slightly forget. But they've been brilliant with me. Jeremy Howe, where I went to him with an idea about the cyclist Beryl Burton, working class woman from Leeds, who was a top flight cyclist, 50s and 60s, but was sort of, because she's a woman and, was criminally ignored by the sporting world and the further afield. He was like, yeah, great, let's do it. And then I went with the drama. So right, and my next idea is about Anne Scargill and 4 women who occupy Parkside Collar in 1993. And he went, right, okay. And I thought, I don't think I could go anywhere else and go, I want to write a play about that includes a mine. It's got links to the miners' strike. It's about miners' wives. It's about 4 working class women stuck down a pit. And he didn't bat an eyelid. He went, right, off, go and do it.
And the other thing I wanted to ask in that sense is actually for you whether feminism and socialism always went together, because it feels like the ideas you're drawn to.
Yeah, you see, it's funny because I never used to say I was, not because I never used to say I was a feminist, because for me, I suppose I was naive, but socialism for me was the all-encompassing umbrella of it. I never felt I had to, because I thought, well, I'm a socialist, so that's a no-brainer, which I know that isn't always true. But yeah, it does. It does, but I always say I'm a socialist first and foremost. That's, yeah, and a feminist second. That comes second. That might not go down very well with some people, but that is my, yeah.
Well, see, I'm going to democratise things and sorry, open up. Before we do that, actually, I just want to have a clip, because we have talked about your writing and about your directing. I want to play a quick clip from the film Shattered that you made last year, which was, it's part of The Guardian. We mentioned The Guardian again. Guardian Brexit shorts,
yes.
Right? So let's have a quick look at this, pick up the conversation. If you haven't seen Shattered, you can watch it online. I really recommend it. It's an astonishing piece of work. I mean, I wonder for you now as an actor and a writer, does it feel risky to be getting involved in politics, or does it feel like actually there's an urgency and actually at this moment you kind of have to?
Yeah, you have to. And I know we're actors, we're performers, but I can't separate it from the work now. And I'm too entrenched now. I've dug that hole. I've dug that big hole for myself, and I'm in it. And I suppose I'm staying there now. And every time I think maybe this time I'll not be as vocal. Maybe it's not my place. I mean, the thing I will back off, and I get asked a lot to do public speaking, at political events, and I think I won't do that because I'm. And it's not being self-deprecating, but I just think I'm not qualified. I will always, when I'm interviewed, people say, "Oh, stop ramming your opinions down." I thought, all that happens. You do press, people interview you. So am I not allowed to express my opinions to another person? Do I have to sit on them? I'm not telling anybody how they should live their lives, but I'm just saying how I feel about things currently and politically, So, but yeah, it is, I suppose it is risky, but in a way, and, this could be the last time I say this and then I'll never work again, but I feel it's actually helped my career in some respects because people now know the kind of work that would interest me. So I think I get very I get interesting projects.
Good work.
Push my way because people, know that's something I'd like to do. I'll be invested in as well. So.
But it's interesting as well because when you say people say you should keep as an actor you should keep your nose out of politics, it's that idea that actually it feels like we're in a moment where if you're not saying anything political, you're saying something political. Because if you're not engaging with what the bloody hell is going on, then actually that's a choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't say we have a response. We don't have a responsibility. And fine if people just want to do the job, want to act and not get involved. But I just think if you were asked, I think to ignore it, like you say, is a political act.
We've got time for a few questions, just a few.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm involved with the group from Nottingham, which has now started a group in Salford, which I think's genius because, there's a lot of really untapped talent all around the country. But I think Salford always gets a bad name for itself, They keep trying to call it Manchester. Media City is in Salford. It is not in Manchester. And Salford is not in Manchester. It is in Salford. It is a city in its own right. Anyway, I digress. But I think it is about getting there, getting involved. And I mean, I'm only doing, and I'm a patron of that group, but I think it's about getting it. It's just making it accessible, isn't it? That people can join groups, and it's how you do it as well. I remember going to a youth group when I was young, the Bolton Octagon. I only went to about 2 sessions because I was slightly intimidated by it, and it was like, right, let's get up and do something. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a softly approach with people. But you've got places like the Royal Exchange that have actually just won an award for best drama school, even though they are not a drama school, but they've got this amazing young company. So I do think it's institutions within the community that have theatres that they do this outreach work because we're not getting it from the Royal Exchange isn't funded by Manchester Council, but they're doing it off their own back. So I think unfortunately we're going to have to do that now, aren't we? We're going to have to fill in the discrepancies, the huge discrepancies. So that will be all of us constantly if we've got to work that through. But I would kill to work with Ken Loach, and I'd love to work in that process, to do something in sequence and to work like that. I've got friends who work with Ken Loach, and I remember friend Jared Kearns was saying when he did Looking for Eric, and there's a scene where the police bust in, he said, we didn't know. He said, so that fear and everybody going, shit, and running and hiding, he said, that was because we weren't told. And I thought, wow, to have that element of surprise as an actor, to be in the moment. We're always taught be in the moment, but to be given that gift, I would love to. And I'd love to do improvisation. I'd really love to do improvisational work. But again, I think sometimes because you've got, I've had this, training, sometimes I think people think, I don't know that you haven't got that ease and freedom, but we're all, we're actors. We can give us a go. But I'm all, I shouldn't be complaining. I'm not, I'm doing all right. But it'd be lovely. I don't think drama school's necessary. If you look at some of the great talent, and especially some of the great talent that's on today, we're saying like Sam Morton, Vicky McClure, they didn't train. I think it depends what, which avenue you want to go down. But even I've worked with some fantastic theatre actors who have never went to drama school. I think it gives you a toolkit, drama school. It gives you a toolkit. I went to drama school to buy myself some time, to get myself some confidence. I didn't feel I could go straight out there and do it. I did a little bit of professional work before I went. But I just thought I just haven't got, I needed that extra to help me through. But I think it is about doing your own work. I think it's about getting out there and writing, and I think, your generation are brilliant at that, and that's what encouraged me to start writing. I thought, right, okay, you can sit and you can moan about it. I'd sit endlessly in coffee shops with friends, when I come down to London, they go, can't, not working, or if we are, the parts aren't very good for us, female friends. And I thought, right, well, if I'm here in another 3 years and we're still, and it was continuous, this conversation, I thought, we've got to do something about it. So I thought, right, I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And I know of course it's easier for me because you've got a bit of a profile, it opens doors. I'm sure if I sent my first script as an unknown, it would never have got made. I'm not under any illusion, disillusion, I don't know anyway. I'm under something. But it is about getting there, out there. And acting's like anything, it's about practice and keep doing it. But you said a working class actor. I think we're an actor. Let's not ghettoise ourselves as we are working class, you know what I mean? We are, but we're actors, so we can play any part. That's what really starts to worry me now. And sometimes it's amazing, these events, but I don't want us all to collectively get pigeonholed, you know, because then, you know, I fought so hard not to be pigeonholed, and I think most actors has, and that's why we want to act, because we like to play where we come from, but obviously you want to play all kinds of roles, and, you know, so... Yeah, no, I did. I mean, at drama school, I was told if I didn't lose my accent, I was also told if I didn't lose my accent, I wouldn't play that. I was also told if I didn't lose weight, I'd never play Juliet. So I don't want to play Juliet no more. But I was, and I was advised, you know, along the line to lose it. But to be honest, I think if I had have lost my accent, I probably wouldn't. Maybe have. It wouldn't. And you've got to look at what makes you unique as well. You know, and I think use that. And you can't, how can you be an actor if you can't honestly, you know, you have to be yourself honestly. Acting's about truth.
It feels like, I mean, we're going to have to wrap it up after that, but it feels like, you know, there's a conversation about class, but there's also a conversation just about money and about the fact that actually the barrier is what's in your pocket a lot of the time. Yeah,
of course, that is it. And it's only going to get worse. You know, and you look, don't you? You look at what's happening in society, and it always reflects within the arts, doesn't it? And how the divide is getting wider and wider in this country, and that will continue unless we get rid of this government, you know. But who knows, you know.
So I'm not supposed to nod, I'm talking neutral, aren't I? Yeah.
That's if we're all still here after this weekend. Now we've you know, going into some illegal conflict. But anyway, less said about that, you know.
Well, that's another conversation.
That is another conversation.
We'll do that in the next conversation. Listen, we're going to have to call it quits there, but my God, the one and only Maxine Peake.